The Cuban Missile Crisis was a major turning point in history because it was the closest the world has ever came to nuclear war. It increased awareness worldwide and brought countries together to put their nuclear activity into check.
After World War II and the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the table was set for proliferation of nuclear weapons between the United States and the Soviet Union. This escalation of the nuclear capabilities earned the title the Cold War because no shots were fired, but threats were very real.
In 1962, because the U.S. had nuclear warheads in the Soviet Union's backyard, Turkey and Italy, they felt that in order to level the playing field, they must arm Cuba, their ally in our backyard.
The Cuban Missile Crisis was the most dangerous time in the history of the human race, and the closest it has ever been to nuclear war. The world almost came to an end in October 1962, and in terms of probability, it should have.
This would have been the beginning of a nuclear war of which nobody would have come out a winner. If it were to have happened, the majority of the population would have died.
The leaders of the three affiliated parties with the Cuban Missile Crisis were Fidel Castro, the Prime Minister and dictator of Cuba, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, and Nikita Khrushchev, the Premier of Russia. All three countries claimed they would push the world to the brink of destruction, but once they reached it, none of them knew what to do. Castro, JFK, and Khrushchev all knew that once the war started, there was no turning back.
For the U.S., the crisis began October 15, 1962, when a U-2 recon mission revealed Soviet missiles under construction in Cuba. This caused President Kennedy to immediately form XCOM, a group of 12 advisors to help him handle the crisis.
When President Kennedy saw the footage from the high-flying U-2 surveillance plane, he couldn't believe what he saw. Soviet nuclear missiles being constructed in Cuba only 90 miles from the tip of Florida.
This was a major safety hazard, as the missiles that were being constructed could hit every major city in the United States except for Seattle.
In response to this, President Kennedy and XCOM demanded a meeting with a representative from the USSR. During the meeting, the representative lied directly to the president's face and openly denied Russian missiles being constructed in Cuba.
Following that, the president felt it was in his best interest to send low-flying surveillance jets into Cuba to find out what was really going on.
Pictures that came back verified the construction of nuclear missile sites. With this knowledge, XCOM created 3 plans of action, the most extreme of these being declare war on and invade Cuba. This would have led to a massive loss of American life and most likely a nuclear war with Russia.
The second plan involved bombing all the known nuclear missile sites, which also would have most likely led to a nuclear war with Russia. And finally, the most reasonable option was a blockade of Cuba, to stop any missiles in transit to the island.
The president decided to place the blockade because it was the option that was least likely to cause a conflict. As was predicted, the blockade intercepted a Russian fleet on their way to Cuba.
After the blockade was put into place, XCOM and the president were forced to find a way to get Russia to pull their missiles out of Cuba.
During this time, another high-flying U-2 surveillance plane was sent to take pictures of the construction progress and was shot down. The pilot's name was Rudy Anderson. He was the only death during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
At the next United Nations meeting, the U.S. representative Adlai Stevenson called the Soviet ambassador on all of their lies, and showed pictures to prove that the Soviets were lying about not constructing nuclear missiles in Cuba.
Directly after this, XCOM received 2 letters from Khrushchev contradicting each other. The first letter said that the USSR was interested in the deal previously proposed by the US in the United Nations meeting. The deal stated that the US would remove their missiles in Turkey if the USSR removed their missiles in Cuba. The second letter was a complete opposite of the first, and made the U.S. wonder if Khrushchev had been overthrown by a coup in Russia.
Kennedy and his advisors decided to write a letter back pretending they had never received the second letter. The following day, the U.S. received a letter verifying that the second letter written was not Khrushchev and that he was still in control of Russia and truly interested in the deal.
This was a sweet deal for the U.S., seeing as how the missiles in Turkey were already scheduled to be taken down. This was a minor detail the U.S. felt Russia didn't need to know. The final of many meetings was scheduled between the Russian ambassador Anatoly Dobrynin and the United States Attorney General Robert Kennedy to settle on the terms of the deal.
Anatoly Dobrynin then contacted Khrushchev through the Politburo and later got confirmation on the deal.
The duration of the Cuban Missile Crisis was 13 days. Over the entirety of the crisis, the recommendation from the military leaders in XCOM was to bomb all the nuclear missile sites and follow up with an invasion.
In all likelihood, the Soviet Union would have retaliated by launching nuclear missiles to destroy Berlin. This would have led to a full-blown nuclear war. Fortunately for the whole world, cooler heads prevailed. President John Kennedy and his closest advisors, his brother and U.S. Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and Special Assistant to the President Kenny O'Donnell, among others, continuously pursued non-military diplomacy as a solution to the stalemate.
In the end, they probably saved the world. In the words of O'Donnell, "If the sun comes up tomorrow, it's only because of men of goodwill, and that's all there is between us and the devil."
So let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interests and the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.